This is my introduction. Hi, my name is Mark E.S. Bernard, and I have 29 years of experience in this field. I have most of my training with IBM or Big Blue, and during that time I worked for 2 years as a red team member attacking offshore financial institutions. I've also worked as manager of compliance and assessment for a provincial government, assessing over 19 ministries and 23,000 employees' compliance with the Information Security Office's policies, procedures, and standards. I've also worked as a privacy and security compliance officer in banking and in government. In addition to my work experience, I taught as a professor of applied arts in computer science. I've shared over 800,000 pieces of knowledge through social media across 147 different countries, and I have multiple professional certifications and designations, as you can see listed below. In 2000, I founded the Atlantic chapter of the High Tech Crime Investigation Association. In 2014, I created the first NIST Cybersecurity Foundation course. During my career, I've also led the first full banking system and government entity to become ISO 27001 certified. I've led projects over 12 of 16 critical infrastructure organizations. 31% of my projects have been in the financial services area, 24% in the government area, 17% in the manufacturing area, and 14% in technology, as well as a number of other projects in pharmaceutical, transportation, telecommunications, academia, legal services, health authorities, and federal cloud service providers. In 2017, I created the following mind map to cover a number of critical areas within the leadership role of the Chief Cybersecurity Officer. Some of these domains include governance, risk management, integration, security architecture, as well as program management and communications. I promised to provide free training on ISO 27000 implementation, and today I'm covering project charters. A critical part of your strategy will include the use of PMBOK, or the Project Management Institute Project Management Body of Knowledge. Over the last 2 decades, most IMIT ICT organizations realize that projects fail a lot and too often. So most organizations have created their own PMO, Project Management Office, and adopted a project management methodology. As the cybersecurity leader or information security leader or privacy leader of your organization, you want to speak the same language that the enterprise understands, and that's project management. I'm going to cover a number of different artifacts used to manage projects, including statements of work, work breakdown structures, project charters, Gantt charts, and these neat little pencil charts for status reporting. Within the PMI body of knowledge, there are risks associated with projects. These are not the kind of risks that we deal with in cybersecurity, but they are related specifically to projects, and you need to be able to speak this language. In the following chart, you can see that there are a number of categories: identifying risk, quantification of risks, risk response, and development of treatment plans, and also control of risks. Within the body of knowledge, there are 5 key activities: initiate, plan, execute, control, and close. The documentation that we're creating, like the project charter, will help you get the process initiated and approved by management. I am also sharing with you a proven implementation strategy that I've used over and over hundreds of times. This project strategy includes establishing the project scope, creating a conformity matrix, creating a list of assets, creating the legal registry, creating document and record registry, conducting the risk assessment and threat assessment, and creating risk treatment plans, creating and executing the communication strategy, establishing the internal audit process, establishing performance metrics, and transferring knowledge and operational control as you walk out the door. Today we are talking about the project charter, and within that we're going to define the scope. In the following slides, we're going to cover a 9-page project charter, which is used to approve projects each annual. On the first page, and the header information includes the name of the project sponsor, who is leading the project, the name of the actual project, the type of project, in this case it's process improvement, as well as contact information. Just below the header information is a spot to check off whether or not you have a Gantt chart included. In the first section of the project charter, we talk about the project objectives, which need to align up with the strategic plan. Normally I pick 3 to 5 objectives. Objectives are defined by a goal plus some sort of action that's going to help deliver that goal. The first objective that I define is achieve compliance with legal obligations defined in the organization's customer contracts or compliance with federal or state statutory and regulatory obligations by designing and implementing a world-class security program that can be independently certified. The next objective I defined is establish a sustainable security, cost-effective program designed to reduce exposure to risks while enhancing the organization's professional reputation through the effective use of technology, transfer of knowledge in documented procedures, and conduct audits and active monitoring. The next objective is quite appealing. Become the vendor of choice in your industry by becoming the least vulnerable through the reduction of exposure to foreign governments and terrorists. The fourth and final objective is coordinate the information security strategic and tactical planning among all organizational business units to ensure all the dots are continually connected. Now we're going to move into the next section, project benefits. Reduce risks and threats to the availability, integrity, and confidentiality of information assets and system resources by providing mechanisms that will mitigate all known risks and threats. The next benefit is demonstrate with evidence the organization's compliance with customer or legal obligations for information security, leveraging best practices such as ISO 27001 and ISO 27002 to achieve a sustainable security posture. The third of 5 benefits is improved, effective and efficiency of security mechanisms by formalizing new practices such as monitoring and incident handling. The fourth benefit is provide a framework for reassurance testing and validation by information security, internal audit, and external audit to reassure senior management that their information assets and system resources are in fact secure. The fifth and final benefit, reduce the likelihood that an accidental incident caused by employees could have an adverse effect on information assets and system resources by providing an ongoing education process through the awareness program. Of course, when you write your own charter, you can use the goals, objectives, and benefits that I've outlined here because I know that they've worked many times, but you might want to come up with your own as well. In the next section of the project charter, we're going to talk about the actual project strategy. That also has to be approved as part of the charter by the senior management team in order to move the program forward. The first step in the project strategy is formalize the scope of registration and clarify the project strategy. Now, you may not be aiming for registration or certification. You may simply be implementing the enterprise security program, which is fine. And I carry on. It may be necessary to prioritize and execute the following process cycle completely with head office before additional business units can be brought into the program. And this is a way of narrowing the scope. This will help improve the likelihood of the project reaching its goals and milestones and avoiding getting bogged down. The next step in the strategy is create a conformity matrix against ISO specifications in scope to identify level of process maturity, location of processes, and evidence, including any assignment of a manager who is supposed to oversee the process. You could substitute ISO for NIST. This will help to clarify governance over the assets, policy, procedure, and standards. by populating the RACI charts, which is a governance tool that we use whenever possible, and estimating the level of capability and maturity based on a scale of 1 to 5. I won't cover the worksheets in this video, but I will cover them in future videos. The third step in the strategy is to create a list of assets in scope and organize into 6 groups designed to streamline the vulnerability management process. These groups are information, people, software, hardware, telecommunications, and facilities, period. The rationale of this breakdown is simply each group is vulnerable to similar threats, and thus by remediating one vulnerability within the group, it will be more cost effective and easier to manage. Step 4 in the strategy is optimize the automation of the asset inventory to provide electronic evidence of conformity while making the process sustainable for security operations, period. A configuration management process is recommended, period. Ownership needs to be assigned for governance purposes following a risk assessment if it has not already been completed, full stop. Step 6 in the strategy, create a legal registry and identify all the legal obligations, including statutes, regulations, and contractual obligations facing internal and facing external. Now, internal ones are obviously the licenses, the license agreements we have for software like Microsoft, and the external agreements and legal obligations are for our customers and the services or products that we deliver. I recommend starting the legal registry as soon as possible because it will take time and it may take the duration of the project to complete. Step 6 in the strategy, create a document registry to identify and control policy, procedure, and standards critical to the program or the ISMS, period. Lead the development of new policies, procedures, and standards as necessary to ensure that they're consistent with the approach of the program. The development of documentation doesn't need to become a huge task or laborious in any way. It can be automated by creating a Tiki or a wiki that faces internal and assigning responsibility to keep it maintained. Step 7 in the strategy, compile risk assessment findings and present to the Corporate Governance Committee for risk-based decisions to accept, transfer, or remediate risks, period. With the support of the ISMS Security Committee, the project team will create corrective actions and preventative actions, logging these actions into the risk treatment plan and continuous improvement registries for tracking until completed, period. Threats, vulnerabilities, existing control efficiencies or effectiveness, and root cause, in addition to the proposed remediation, need to be recorded and presented to the Governance Committee. Step 8. Design and execute the communication strategy for awareness and training using identified channels, i.e. face-to-face meetings or in-person meetings, WebEx, email, management meetings, and staff meetings. As I've mentioned before, and I'll say it again and again, communications is probably 30% of the solution. Effective communications can empower people. Step 9. Establish internal audit process designed to verify and validate the ISMS or the program to ensure that conformity against policy, procedures, and standards is maintained, period. Any findings will be reported to the ISMS Management Committee for decisions and follow-up with the CAPA, which stands for Corrective Action or Preventative Action. Step 10. Create metrics for management monitoring and integrate with strategic and tactical SecureKM business plans. I will cover performance metrics in a section called Secure Service Management. These are crucial simply because you need to select the right metrics that show that your program is actually working, and selecting the wrong metrics will actually have an adverse impact. Step 11. Transfer full operational control of the ISMS program to the management team and close the project. Step 12 is simple. Follow up on any warranty issues that you've guaranteed. Some people might look at the strategy and say, well, where did you implement any security controls? Well, the point is that ISO 27001 is about implementing the management system. So setting up things like governance, risk management, continual improvement, internal audit. Those are all the deliverables of the ISMS. This is the key to success or failure, and most programs that I've audited, they actually completely miss this whole part. The integration with IMIT or ICT is listed in Annex A, and those activities become part of the CAPA as you execute risk treatment plans. Now today we're talking specifically about the project charter and what the contents of the project charter look like. Next we're going to talk about critical success factors. Critical success factors are also known as CSFs in the governance world. The first one is ensure the full support of all senior management, including the communication of their support to their staff. Number 2, management's commitment by providing resources and the active participation of assigned resources. These are critical success factors because the management team needs to support the whole process of adopting a cybersecurity framework. In some occasions, I've actually had the president or the CEO sign a memorandum that instructs his team to follow along and support the adoption of the ISMS. Number 3, SecureKM's employee and management team understand the information security governance and risk management process. Generally, managers won't make decisions about things they don't understand. So this, again, is part of the communication strategy that I mentioned that is 30% of the solution. You'll need to spend some time with people who don't fully grasp it and break down the message and make sure that they actually can read it back to you. But you also have to respect the culture and the senior leaders who influence the organization. So in no way do you want to make them look bad. And I'm not talking about them sitting in front of you and actually reading the document and telling you whether they understand it or testing them. You will know if they understand or not when you conduct the management committee meetings. Number 4, timely turnaround of assignments to the SecureKM project team members, building evidence of conformity for external registration auditors. Now throughout the strategy and the charter I talk a lot about registration, but registration is not always the goal, and many, probably 50% of the organizations I work for implement ISO 27001 without certification. The final critical success factor, timely turnaround on the approval of policies, procedures, and standards by management and subject matter experts. This documentation is important because it's part of the communication process, and if it's not prepared and approved, you won't be able to execute the communication. The next section deals with project deliverables, and the first deliverable is document a remediation project plan to establish focal areas, which includes a recommended order of task execution to reach conformance as quickly as possible. The next deliverable is propose process designs to close conformance gaps and seek leadership feedback in addition to approval. The third bullet for deliverables reads, document the ISMS process design and seek leadership feedback and approval. So you may have noticed a sort of a path here in the last 3 bullets. We talked about closing the gaps, getting approval for the gaps, and now in this bullet we're talking about executing the ISMS process and seeking leadership feedback and approval. Second bullet from the top, document corrective actions to drive continual improvement. Third bullet down from the top, ensure training is inherent in the implementation process to meet the training requirements of the standard. Fourth bullet from the top, run another quick mock internal audit prior to the certifications. Fifth bullet from the top, support internal effort for risk assessment and risk treatment. The final bullet reads, derive and populate meaningful metrics for Stage 1 and Stage 2 audit. The next section of the project charter, key interim deliverables, and it reads, document a remediation project plan to establish focal areas, which include a recommended order of task execution to reach conformance as quickly as possible. In the next section of the project charter, we're going to talk about project scope, which we will cover again in a scope session. Scoping is important to understand what the deliverables are and to avoid having any scope creep happen, which does occur on projects when other managers realize that you have approval to execute some security processes and they have some security deliverables that they need to take care of. So they might try and lump those into your project. Normally, if the program was already up, established, and running, that would be a non-issue. However, because it is the implementation stages of this new cybersecurity program, then it's crucial that you keep the scope as narrow and focused on the deliverables as humanly possible to ensure the success of your project. That all said, let's go down the list of what's in scope and what's out of scope. Beginning on the left-hand side of what's in scope, all information, people, software, hardware, facilities within the scope of certification. Number 2, documented policies, procedures, standards as required. Number 3, creation of a communication strategy including awareness and training. Number 4, facilitating the risk management adoption including the policy and procedure development. Number 5, facilitate the development of an asset inventory. Number 6, facilitate the risk assessment and report to the governance committee. Number 7, integration of the ISMS within existing business practices, including IMIT and ICT. Number 8, creation of metrics for management monitoring and performance reporting. Number 9, recommendations for appropriate governance structures. Number 10, creation of a continuous improvement plan. Number 11, creation of the legal obligations registry. And finally, number 12, ISMS knowledge transfer. Now let's go down the list on the right-hand side, what's not in scope. This process does not include remediation of any vulnerabilities. This process will not include the procurement of any new tools for security. And this process will not include any independent security testing. Each of the items that were listed out of scope have a specific amount of money attached to the services. So this is management's opportunity to request that they be included in scope or to recognize that fact. The next section we're going to talk about is the work breakdown structure, project milestones. As we move across the table from left to right, the columns represent milestones, type of resources, skill set, effort, duration, and target dates. In the first record, we're looking to finalize the scope for registration. The consultant and management team would be involved. The skill sets required are project management and of course ISO 27001. The amount of effort, 2 days, and the duration over 2 weeks. That could vary depending on a number of factors, and then there's a date assigned to the deliverable. Speaking in project management terms, the duration is always longer than the amount of effort required. The effort actually represents person hours that would be invested into the deliverable. Next on the work breakdown structure is finalized project plan. The type of resource required is a consultant and, of course, the management team. The skill sets required are project management and ISO 27001. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the delivery date is September 6th. Third item on the work breakdown structure is create ISMS governance committee. The consultant is involved along with the management review committee, risk management, ISO 27001 skills, as well as subject matter experts are involved. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the delivery date is the 16th. Next on the list of milestones and work breakdown structure is create and facilitate communication strategy to deliver awareness and skills training. Who's involved? The resources are consultant, management, and human resources because they do most of the direct employee training. The skills required are communications, adult training development, and ISO 27001. The amount of effort is 5 days over 2 weeks. Next on the work breakdown structure is create the integrated management system conformity matrix. Who's involved is a consultant, subject matter experts. The skill sets, management, subject matter experts, and ISO 27002. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the delivery is October 30th. Next on the list is document policies, procedures, and security standards as required. The consultant would be involved along with the subject matter experts. The skills required are policy writing, technical writing, and of course knowledge of ISO 27001. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the delivery date is October 30th. Next on the list of milestones is create an asset inventory. The type of resource will be the consultant and subject matter experts. The type of skills, management, subject matter experts, and ISO 27001. The amount of effort required, 5 days over 4 weeks, and the target date is November 23rd. Next on the list of milestones is complete the risk assessment. Who's involved? The consultant. The type of skills required, management, subject matter experts, and ISO 27001. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the target date is November 30th. Next on the list of milestones in the work breakdown table is review incident and problems. The consultant would be doing this. The skills required are management, subject matter experts, and of course skills involving ISO 27001. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the target date is November 30th. You'll notice that a number of the milestones in the work breakdown table have the same target date. It's fine to run things in parallel as long as different resources are executing the tasks that need to be required. This will also be reflected in the Gantt chart, which we'll talk about another time. Next on the list is create a legal registry. The consultant will lead this. The skills required are management, subject matter experts, and ISO 27001. The amount of effort is 5 days over 4 weeks, and the target date is November 23rd. As I mentioned before, the legal registry is something that will take time to build. It could run the duration of the project. Next on the list of milestones is create a risk treatment plan to submit to the governance committee. The consultant will lead this. The skills required are management, subject matter experts, also ISO 27001. The amount of effort, 2 days over 2 weeks, and the target date is November 30th. To create the corrective actions and preventative action plans, the consultant will have to actually meet with the managers who have been assigned responsibility. If you recall earlier when we were doing the asset inventory, we need to know who is responsible for the controls involving that asset. Next on the list of milestones is create a continuous improvement plan, again to submit to the governance committee. The consultant will lead this, and the skills required are management, subject matter experts, and also ISO 27001. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the target date is November 30th. Next on the list is complete internal audit, which includes the audit schedule, plans, procedures, and the audit report recently created to submit to the governance committee. In some organizations, there may already be an internal audit department, which you might be able to leverage if it's possible. But if not, you'll have to stand up your own internal audit process to verify and validate the ISO. The consultant will lead this. As well, management skills are required, and of course knowledge of ISO 27001 and 27002. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the target date is November 30th to complete this effort. The next step on the milestones is verify and validate the successful closure of risk treatment plan. This is an important step within the internal audit process and the enterprise cybersecurity program, because a lot of times controls are not checked or verified after the fact until the next cycle of security testing or external audits are conducted. However, because ISO 27001 is built on a quality management system, we want to verify the quality of the program on a continual basis, just like auditing and the security program in itself. The next step in the milestone is Stage 1 ISMS audit, and this is conducted by an external auditor. However, they will be reviewing the work of the internal auditor because the internal auditor will actually have had the list of controls that need to be reviewed and verified, and they would have conducted that audit by now. Your ISO 27001 consultant will lead this process and conduct the audit. He'll probably rely on management and subject matter experts, as well as his own 27001, 27002 knowledge. It'll take 2 days over 2 weeks, and December 7th is the target date. Next milestone is Stage 2 ISMS audit. The consultant would participate in this, but the external auditor would conduct it. The management team may be involved, as well as subject matter experts, and of course the skills of ISO 27001 and 2 are required. The amount of effort is 2 days over 2 weeks, and the target date is December 11th. However, all items identified in Stage 1 audit must have been remediated before the Stage 2 audit can actually kick off. So that will be a critical part, is to follow up on those non-conforming. ISO audits are quite different than other audits in a couple ways. First of all, ISO audits review all conformities. These are not based on samples, like some external auditors take samples of different departments and only review those sets of controls. But ISO 27000 reviews all audits that have been implemented and approved in the statement of applicability. Another unique aspect of ISO audits, ISO 27001 audits, is that at the end of each day, the auditor will meet with the management team and basically give them a rundown on what was discovered that day. Finally, the last item on the work breakdown structure or list of milestones is complete the ISMS knowledge transfer. The consultant would lead this, management would be involved, and of course the other skills required are ISO 27001 and 2. It would take about 2 days, roughly, effort over 2 weeks, and the target date is December 28th. Normally, the entire implementation from beginning to end takes about 3 months. The next section in the project charter that needs to be completed are known constraints. This is where you list issues that you know already exist because you've met with the management team and talked to them, and they've told you, they provided some feedback on where they think the showstoppers might be. The known constraint listed here reads as follows. Incomplete details prevent us from creating a more accurate and realistic project plan. So a scoping task has been added to the timeline before the project kickoff. We touched on the topic of scoping within the project charter, but I will have a much more detailed explanation in a future video that will guide you through the step-by-step process. As I mentioned before, scoping is a critical element to help narrow the focus of your project and provide some assurance of success, but also to prevent any sort of scope creep from happening when managers, other outside managers, will try and add tasks or more deliverables to the approved project after it's already been approved. The next section in the project charter to complete are beginning assumptions. These are the understandings that we have of the conditions and the environment and the company, including the scoping as well, that will help set the stage for how we deliver the deliverables and what successes or risks that we might encounter. The organization has many stakeholders that are yet to be identified. This could create the potential of unknown risks to creep into the project, potentially impacting the culture shift happening and the deliverables or timelines involved. Assumption number 2, SecureKM has never established an enterprise information security program or a cybersecurity program before, and thus the typical amount of effort that will be required to raise awareness and document policies, procedures, and standards will increase, as buy-in and support must be generated to assure the success of this project. This assumption ties back to the communication strategy and the quality of the content that you'll be communicating with the employees and managers that will help empower them. If they're empowered, they will support your efforts. The next item that needs to be documented in the project charter is a mini risk assessment. And this is broken down into basically a 3-scale system. low, medium, high. The first risk involves the schedule. The availability of staff within this project timeline is very important. The probability is low, but the impact is high. If you recall, earlier on in the presentation we talked about risks that are associated with the project, so it might be a good time to go back and revisit that slide. Next on the risk table is structure, engineering, business practice risk. And what's described here is the heightened understanding of information security or cybersecurity may introduce a shift in culture. The assessed impact is high probability and high impact. If you recall earlier in the project, we identified this project as a process improvement project. So this is why the impact is high here, because we are going to be tinkering with the process, clarifying and documenting them in a way that's never been done before. Next on the risk scale is technical risk. The assessment of threats and vulnerabilities and existing control effectiveness will lead to changes in the infrastructure. The probability of this happening is high and the impact is low. The reason why the impact is low is because we're not going to be creating brand new, net new procedures for the staff to follow. We're going to document what they're already doing. So maybe they weren't documented before, but they know what they're doing. The last risk to consider involves beta site versus subsequent implementation risk. The risk statement made, this project will lead to process re-engineering and potentially new technology, potentially impacting existing infrastructure. The probability is low because we said in the scoping statement we're not implementing any new technology, we're just documenting existing processes. The impact, however, if it did happen, would be medium because it would be out of scope. On page 8 of 9, we list a number of people, including the project team, their name and their contact information for the project manager should they need to be contacted. In the next section, we document the issue resolution team. Probably some of these managers will be on the governance committee, including the sponsor, and again, their names and contact information should a problem arise. In the last section on this page, we document the departments that will be impacted by the project. We include a contact name and phone number. Should issues arise or problems, these are the people that we would be in contact with. On page 9 of 9 of the project charter, we document the potential project priority, and we identify whether it's going to be a global project or a local project, or whether it's a high, medium, or low priority project. In the next section, user/client responsibilities, we added a little verbiage saying the responsibilities include providing timely responses to questions and facilitating the sharing of evidence, documentation, and knowledge. In the last block, we ask for the signature of the sponsor, including a date, as well as the project manager's signature and a date, and the IT representative to identify the unity of the project team and also their support. Well, this concludes my presentation on how to build a project charter and complete it. I hope that you found it useful, and please feel free to share this video with your friends, and don't forget to like it and subscribe. How can Secure Knowledge Management help you? I'm the President and CEO for Secure Knowledge Management. I had a vision for an organization that would be able to help small to medium-sized businesses with their cybersecurity needs, and here it is, Secure Knowledge Management. One of our strengths is sharing knowledge, and we can do that by either training and certifying the individual professionals, or we can come in and help certify their organizations and exchange knowledge with all the stakeholders. We recognize that there are a lot of highly skilled professionals already out there in the industry performing cybersecurity work. We also recognize the fact that they may not have time to pull together all the materials for every project. We're experts in that area, and this is a strength that we can share with you to help make your program better. We also recognize that there are some leaders out there in industry who simply need an expert who they can rely on as their trusted advisor, someone who can bring the expertise, who's done the work before and can help them. We can share our expertise in many ways. You can outsource your security manager role or your internal auditor role for the security program or your CISO role. We can also act as a trusted advisor for your board of directors. We feel that this Seek expertise is a strategic importance to small to medium-sized businesses who can't afford a full-time person to perform these roles. We can just act on a part-time basis. We also recognize that some small to medium-sized businesses don't have the time or skills in-house that they can develop in order to perform the role of a security manager or security auditor. This includes some very technical roles such as security monitoring or incident management or dealing with compliance with different statutes or regulations. If you want to learn more or you have a question, go to our website, drop us a message, and we'll get right back to you. This is my personal contact information. I want to thank you for listening to our presentation and have yourself a great day.